Which fats are improving insulin resistance? Saturated fat, monounsaturated, or polyunsaturated fats? What science really shows. You probably hear a lot about some fats being bad for you. Insulin is needed to remove sugar from the blood and help cells use sugar for energy. But when insulin does not do its job, we call it insulin resistance. Most people have some level of insulin resistance even before developing diabetes, but sometimes this system stops working properly. This is called insulin resistance. Not all fats are the same when it comes to their effect on insulin resistance. When researchers fed rats diets high in saturated fats for 8 weeks, these animals became insulin resistant. But rats that got the same amount of polyunsaturated fats actually had better insulin sensitivity than the control group. The saturated fat group had 125% more diacylglycerol in their muscles compared to normal rats. This is a type of fat that builds up in muscle cells and interferes with work of insulin. But here's where it gets really interesting. The polyunsaturated fat group also had some increase in muscle fats, but their bodies stored these fats differently. They stored 105% more as safe storage fat called triacylglycerol instead of the harmful diacylglycerol. This shows that your body handles different fats in completely different ways. Human research tells us even more about this story. Wait, there is more, but do not forget to hit the like button if you think this video is useful. Scientists studied overweight and obese adults who had normal blood sugar levels. They gave one group a low-fat diet with 20% of calories from fat and 8% from saturated fat. The other group got a high-fat diet with 55% of calories from fat and 25% from saturated fat. All the food was provided by researchers so they could control exactly what people ate. The results were clear. People on the high saturated fat diet had worse insulin sensitivity. Their glucose disposal rate during insulin tests dropped significantly. The low-fat group had no problem. Their insulin sensitivity stayed the same or even improved slightly. What's really amazing is how fast these changes can happen. One study showed that just 24 hours of eating a diet high in saturated fats was enough to cause insulin resistance. In this study, people's blood sugar levels went up by 83% after just 1 day of eating saturated fats. This happened in people with normal glucose tolerance and also in people who already had some glucose problems. Even eating just one breakfast high in saturated fats increased insulin resistance by 55%. This shows that these effects start happening right away, not just after weeks or months of eating poorly. But the good news is that these changes can be reversed quickly too. When people went back to eating a healthy diet, their insulin sensitivity started improving within 24 hours. After 1 day of healthy eating, the insulin resistance was already getting better. Scientists wanted to understand exactly how this works at the cellular level. They took muscle cells and exposed them to different types of fats in laboratory dishes. When they added palmitic acid, which is a saturated fat, the cells had 2 times more ceramide and 5 times more diacylglycerol. These are both fat compounds that interfere with insulin signaling. The cells also took up much less glucose when insulin was present. But when they added linoleic acid, which is a polyunsaturated fat, something different happened. The cells didn't have increased levels of these harmful fat compounds. Their glucose uptake stayed normal. Both types of fats increased the safe storage fat, but only saturated fats caused the harmful changes. A major analysis looked at 90 different research with 216 treatment groups. This gave scientists a really good picture of how different fats affect insulin and glucose. When people replaced 5% of their carbohydrate calories with saturated fats, their fasting insulin went down by 1.1 units. When they replaced carbs with polyunsaturated fats, insulin went down by 1.6 units. But replacing carbs with monounsaturated fats didn't change fasting insulin much. The analysis also showed that eating polyunsaturated fats instead of saturated fats improved insulin resistance by 4.1%. This might not sound like much, but in medical terms, this is actually a significant improvement. Another interesting finding was about insulin secretion. When people ate more polyunsaturated fats, their pancreas got better at making insulin when needed. This happened whether they replaced carbohydrates, saturated fats, or even monounsaturated fats with polyunsaturated fats. One controlled study looked at 3 different diets over 4 weeks each. All diets had the same amount of total fat, 28% of calories. But one diet was high in oleic acid, which is a monounsaturated fat found in olive oil. Another was high in palmitic acid, which is a saturated fat. The third was high in trans fats. People's insulin sensitivity was lowest on the saturated fat diet. It dropped by 24% in overweight people compared to the monounsaturated fat diet. But lean people didn't have this problem. This suggests that if you're already carrying extra weight, saturated fats might be especially harmful for your insulin sensitivity. The research also shows that your VLDL particles, which carry fats in your blood, change their composition based on what you eat. When people ate more saturated fats, specific fatty acids in these particles were linked to worse insulin sensitivity. A fatty acid called N6-docosapentaenoic acid was particularly important. When levels of this fatty acid went up, insulin sensitivity went down. Scientists measured insulin sensitivity using very precise methods called hyperinsulinemic euglycemic clamps. This is considered the gold standard for measuring how well insulin works in the body. These research consistently showed that saturated fats make insulin work less effectively. The effects weren't just seen in blood tests. When researchers used MRI scans to look at abdominal fat, they found interesting patterns. Changes in subcutaneous fat, the fat under your skin, were linked to insulin sensitivity changes. But changes in the deeper belly fat weren't as strongly connected. These findings have important implications for everyday eating. The research suggests that the type of fat you eat might be more important than the total amount of fat. Replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats from sources like fish, nuts, and seeds could help maintain better insulin sensitivity. The speed of these changes is particularly striking. Within hours of eating saturated fats, your muscle cells start accumulating the wrong types of fat compounds. Your insulin sensitivity can drop significantly in just one day. But the reverse is also true. When you switch to healthier fats, your body starts to recover quickly. This research helps explain why some high-fat diets can be problematic while others might not be. It's not just about the amount of fat, but about what kinds of fats you're eating. Saturated fats from sources like butter, fatty meats, and processed foods seem to cause the most problems with insulin resistance. Understanding these mechanisms gives us better tools for preventing type 2 diabetes and managing blood sugar levels. The research clearly shows that dietary choices have rapid and measurable effects on how our bodies handle glucose and insulin. Do not forget to click the like button and subscribe. On the screen you see an essential video, 12 minerals and vitamins every diabetic must take for you. Thanks very much for watching this video. See you in the next video.